Hey everybody, it's been a while since last time we were here. We've picked up quite a few new cards since we last played. Got some chests. I got one chest I can open here. I'm going to go ahead and set my Castle 5 gold chest to start opening up. And we're going to open our silver chest here. Okay, we picked up some Archer's Tribe triplets now. You can also see I spent quite a bit of gold. Let's see what's in our store here. Skull King, we already have a level 2 Skull King, so we're a long ways away from getting to level 3, so we probably won't be able to buy our way there. I've been running several different decks lately. This is the one that we were sort of most familiar with. This got us to our highest trophy level. I also played around with this deck, this sort of fortify deck where you try to really slow down your opponent and then ultimately win with the Skull King and the Demon to control some cards at the end, or often you win in overtime. Some people call that an overtime deck because between your ability to kill all of their stuff, play the Skull King at the end to just keep control of the board, and continually fortify, you often end up with a stronger castle by the end of the match, and then you win when in overtime when the overtime clock starts knocking points off the castle. So that's a very different deck from the one we've normally been playing. I've also started playing with this deck here. This is more of a fun deck. I don't know that this deck is really a deck that can be played at the highest level. I don't see too many of the top players play a deck with a Specter, but that's clearly the idea behind this deck. It is to get out lots and lots of creatures and then to play a giant Specter and let the Specter do the job from there. I've been playing with a little bit this evening. I'll run a couple of games back here. I'll just show you some of the recent games I've played with it. I think we won our last 3, so we'll walk through these 3 games. And this got me back up to above 1,400 trophies. I was experimenting so much with decks I fell below. So one of the things you'll see here is I'm not playing the archers. Why? Well, the goal of this deck is really to get out the Specter with a lot of creatures on the board. If I run my archers right down the board real quickly and my opponent kills them, that doesn't help me very much. So I kind of actually want to take things a little slow, even though I have a lot of low mana cost cards. I want to play them slowly. Notice I played the Druid. I don't know if you noticed that there. I played the Druid a little further back. I didn't play it as far up in the starting lane as I could. Why? Well, the plan here is to get, because I knew his Druid was going to kill whatever I had in that lane. And ultimately, I want his Druid to meet me somewhere closer to the middle of the board where I can throw my level 5 skeletons. The problem is, or not level 5, but my skeletons swarm at them. The problem is my skeleton swarm isn't going to beat that level 5 druid alone. I think that level 5 druid will actually kill. My skeleton swarm isn't that strong. I'll actually kill it before I can kill the level 5 druid. So I know I need my druid for support on that. And of course the level 5 druid will kill my level 3 druid first. So I need them both together. So I put my druid a little farther back so that when the druid gets closer to my druid, then I can drop my skeletons on them and hopefully surprise them and take out their druid. And so there it is. I played the skeletons. Now my opponent did play a dwarf, but not far enough in front, and it's ultimately going to cost them both their druid and the dwarf. And that was a pretty big win for us. And I played another skeleton swarm at the bottom. And now I've got control of a couple of lanes. Save that darn the statue that's in the way. But I'm getting out lots of archers. Here I decided to go for another Archer's Tribe, and eventually here I'm going to play that Specter. I decided to play it right now. I get a plus 16 Specter, which is quite strong. It's approximately about 25. I think it's technically 24, but it's about 25 points per unit out there of attack. That's that's quite a bit of attack. Added on to it's already around 100 attack. The thing is that this deck is pretty resistant to things like Demon because you usually have so many small creatures out there that the Demon doesn't really target your big Specters. The only way to really target your Specters are things like Lightning Bolt and some other big cards, maybe Meteor. But really, that's how this deck kind of works. Okay, so that was one game. Let me show you a second game that we won. Now, I mean, one option here, you might be thinking, why not play little skeletons? Then you get 3 skeletons for 2 mana. That would get you more creatures out, and that's true. But I feel like that's just too many low-level cards. One real, and it should be obvious here, one real danger card for your deck, if you're going to play this kind of deck, is arrows. And I felt like by putting in the Druid, which are a little higher mana cost, they're a little more resilient to arrows. They're a little harder for your opponent to deal with. They slow your opponent down a little bit more. See that the Inferno doesn't quite kill even my only level 3 Druid there. And so by doing this, this gives me a better chance of annoying my opponent enough, keeping my cards on the table long enough that eventually I'll be able to play a large Specter. Okay, so I don't mind if the opponent pushes my cards back like that, because again, my goal is to get out lots and lots of creatures first and then play a Specter. There's always a danger in waiting too long that they might wipe all your creatures out, so that's why I played the Specter here rather than the Skeleton Swarm. I didn't want to get up there and find out my opponent had arrows and wiped everything out, and then I have this little teeny tiny Specter. So instead I backed up my Specter with a bunch of skeletons that are going to run out up front there. I decided to go ahead and just kill that the one creature my opponent had out, because why not? Lightning, I did put lightning in this deck. Originally I had the demon and I thought that was a stronger move, because the demon both does damage to a creature and it comes out on the board. The problem I kept running into when I was trying to run it that way was that my opponent wouldn't just have one creature in that lane. They would have like a Black Knight and a skeleton, or they would have like the Executioner and a mage or something like that, or some other little card behind it, and I couldn't kill the card I wanted to heal. Obviously Executioner is a problem card for us in this deck, because the Executioner knocks out our archers, Executioner knocks out our skeletons both in one swipe, and it also does quite a bit of damage to it can kill the druids, it can also kill the warriors pretty easily. So we want to make sure we're getting rid of executioners when they come out. And the problem with demon is you can't always target the creature you want. It kills the weakest creature in the lane, whereas with the lightning bolt it targets the strongest creature in the lane. So that's why I decided to go with the lightning bolt. Even though it doesn't leave me with a creature on the board, it does get rid of the real problem card that my opponent can play. So I swapped out the demon there for the lightning bolt. Okay, so this will be the last game that I show. And so I don't remember what my opponent was playing in this one. I feel like it had something to do with trying to get out the Mud Elemental. Of course, another difficult card for us to deal with is the Pirate. You know, the Druid alone can handle the Pirate if the time is enough, but sometimes there's not enough space and time for the Druid to get there. So you'll see here we're actually going to lose our Druid. That was kind of annoying. I think the Skeleton Swarm can take out a level 4 Druid by itself, but not much higher. Luckily I had something to back that up, and then I got another Skeleton Swarm to try to deal with this golem. The good news is, like I said earlier, opponent's demons don't do much damage to you here, because you often have so many little creatures out that they can't really do a ton of damage. And at this point I'm just going, oh my gosh, I need to get creatures on the board. I'm kind of in a lot of trouble here. And so that's why I played those skeletons or not skeletons, but rather the archers way back, because I didn't want to play them right up front where they would just get immediately killed by my opponent. So I took out our problem card, and our opponent came with the Skull King, which is, you know, a card that we also have, and it's an important card in a Reaper or in a Specter deck. So okay, here we go, our Skull King. The other thing about the Specter deck is you don't have to be afraid to not have control of the lanes, to kind of be in the back, like to have your opponent putting pressure on you, because you can make large comebacks with the Specter deck because by being in the back and playing the Specter, you get a chance to get a really strong Specter. If you're all the way up front, your opponent could always throw arrows or has more of a tendency to play Meteor, things like that, to destroy your cards that are attacking their castle. But if you are farther back, your opponent can't do those things, or is less likely to play those. which can leave you in a very strong position after you regain control by getting the specters out. Okay, so you can see that's exactly what happened here. Our opponent looked like they had us on the ropes, looked like we were in big trouble, but we were able to get two pretty large specters out, and it was a real difficulty for our opponent to deal with them. And then we got to play our own Skull King and have a ton of archers on the board, and our opponent's in real trouble here. Even though they have a Mud Elemental, I've got a Lightning for that, and they're kind of out of cards. Sure, they can play a Metamorph and get a Skeleton, and they can play a Pirate, but that's just not going to do much. And in the meantime, we're just completely crushing their castle. So again, the point here is that you don't have to get too panicky if your opponent's knocking at your door. As long as you can get a lot of creatures out, sort of defending, and then play a giant Specter, you can turn the tables on them pretty quickly. Okay, so that's all I'm going to show for the Specter deck tonight, and that's kind of the ideas around how to play it. I won't say that this is necessarily the perfect Specter deck. I think it's a reasonable one at this level, at this castle level. There may be other cards you might prefer at different castle levels. And there may be different mix and matchups. I mean, you could play it with the smaller skeletons. I could see somebody saying, hey, I want to play a little slower, so I'm going to play it with the dwarf. There are some other options out there. Some people might play it with triplets. Not crazy about that because triplets do cost a lot. I've also seen people play it with two Specters. I just don't think you have that many opportunities to get that many Specters out. I've seen people play it with two Skull Kings, which is okay. But I think running with one Specter is usually good enough. Okay, that's it for this video. Thanks everybody, and have a good evening.